Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Bring the World Home, a production of the Returned Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii. Each week we explore the experiences and opportunities that working with your fellow human beings around the world might present to you. The Peace Corps service has been operating for 47 years in over 132 countries around the world. Peace Corps has processed and utilized the talents and energies of over 190,000 volunteers in its 47 years of service. Today we have with us again Zachary McNish. Zachary, welcome to Bring the World Home.
Thanks, glad to be here.
You were a volunteer in Panama from 1999 to 2003.
Yep.
And served two different kinds of programs there. We've explored some of that in previous program with you, but today we'd like to get into the idea of namesake of our program, Bringing the World Home. You were inspired to continue doing good, volunteering. You know, volunteer is the Latin root for will. The idea of free will. The idea that goes back to classic antiquities, is discussed by Plato and Socrates and many philosophers, of serving society, making society better. In modern times, Alexis de Tocqueville ignited the theory that voluntary association was the counterbalance to individualism. Since your service, you started a wonderful organization, I believe, called Native Future, and we wanted to have you on the program today to talk a little bit about how an individual can do things outside of an organization like the Peace Corps. We're always talking about working within Peace Corps, and you've taken it a step further. Tell us a little bit about how Native Future began, what brought it into existence, and why.
Okay, well, Native Future is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're incorporated here in Hawaii, and we work with the Wonan people of Panama, which was one of the groups that I lived with when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Panama. There's about 7,000 Wonan left in Panama, and a few thousand more in Colombia, although they're in the FARC-controlled regions of the Choco district, so not too many people have worked with them in the last few decades in Colombia. So not sure how many are in Colombia, but 7,000 or 8,000 in Panama.
And the significance of the Wonan, are they're an indigenous people?
They're an indigenous people.
Okay.
Where they were 10,000 years ago, we're not really sure, but in the last 500 to 2,000 years, they've been in this area of Panama and Colombia. Panama was part of Colombia until a little over 100 years ago. So
you have a map here. Can you show me?
Yeah.
This is Wonan territory.
Yeah. So this is
cultural.
The Wonan are generally in the eastern part of Panama.
Okay.
In the eastern rainforest, they're a sort of river people, and so they inhabit the river valleys, semi-nomadic until a generation or two ago, and we work with three particular Wonan communities in the district of Chiman in Panama, which is only accessible by boat. It's a province that's sort of carved out between the Mahe mountain range to the north and the Pacific Ocean to the south. So you go down a river along the ocean, and then you can access the district of Chiman and the various towns in that district by boat.
Okay. And so you began Native Future to benefit these people?
For me, the idea behind forming Native Future was the response to a very specific problem, which was I was a Peace Corps volunteer in one of these communities. They didn't have title to their lands. Their lands were being taken by migrant cattle ranchers from other parts of Panama who would come in and cut down their rainforests. And these are forests that the Wonan used for hunting, for fishing, gathering medicinal plants, gathering materials to make their traditional houses, to make their traditional implements they used in religious rituals, the materials they used for handcrafts that they would sell to get income, the rivers that the shrimp they eat would live in. So it was, they're very dependent on these forests, which were sort of quickly being taken from them by cattle ranchers from other parts of Panama who would come in and cut down the forest to make cow pasture.
Sí, nosotros nos reconocemos que tenemos nuestra propia identidad. Wonan es un grupo étnico diferente a todos otros grupos que existen en Panamá. Son un grupo con su propia identidad, muy distinto. Sobre todo se va a notar mucho más marcado todavía en el idioma y la religiosidad, ¿verdad? Así que nos consideramos, aunque somos un grupo muy pequeño en Panamá, pero sí tenemos nuestra propia identidad autóctona, netamente Wonan. Nosotros queremos que el mundo y en nuestro país reconozcan que nosotros vivimos, nuestros antepasados y nuestra gente actual, nuestros padres viven en un entorno de la selva, ¿verdad? No quieren mantener la ecología, ¿verdad? Quieren mantener la reserva de la naturaleza porque ella es la que nos da vida. Así que también a la protección del medio ambiente, ¿verdad? Porque de la naturaleza se está desarrollando lo que es la artesanía. Y la artesanía es un punto muy primordial para nuestra gente porque de ella ellos reciben una economía, una subsistencia económica para sus alimentos, para su salud, para sus estudios, los estudios de sus hijos, ¿verdad? Y todo implica, y también como arte queremos promover el arte nuestro, el arte Wonan desde la cultura nuestra hacia la faz de nuestro país y a nivel internacional, ¿verdad? Que hay un grupo pequeño en Panamá pero que tiene un potencial artístico.
Indigenous people coming in trying to take
exactly
something from
and not just
these-
trying, succeeding in taking taking the forests. And it was sort of a sad story in a way to watch these people who's they're really just hanging on by a thread as a culture already surrounded by so many other influences in society and sort of very isolated here, having others encroach on that little bit that they have left.
Overpowering them?
Yeah, I think overpowering them, although not in sort of a violent action sort of way, but culturally overpowering them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I wanted to try to do something to help that. It was something that was too political for me to work on as a Peace Corps volunteer. But when I got back to the States and I still had the desire to help them and thought this is something where I can maybe make a difference. Maybe not, but it's certainly worth giving it a shot. And there was another volunteer who I lived with in this community of Rio Hondo, and the two of us and a couple of other Americans started this nonprofit, Native Future, in 2003.
What's the value of it to you, and why should we care as viewers?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's a reason why in the abstract anyone should care about any other person, but the reality is that we do care about other people. And I think for Hawaii, to me, coming from Hawaii, this was particularly the plight of the Wonan was resonant with me because I think certainly one of the big issues in Hawaii is I think at the root of many of the social problems in Hawaii is the lands being taken from an indigenous people and the effects that that's had on a sort of the alienation of a culture from their lands, a culture that was once tied to their lands being sort of alienated from those lands. And to me, I saw something very similar about to happen to the Wonan. And I think for us in Hawaii, we're dealing with the effects of that. How many hundreds of years later still, this was a chance to stop that from happening.
Nip it in the bud.
Exactly. To me, these were people I lived with. I shared a life with them. And so for me, it was a very specific connection to these people and to this place that I wanted to help them preserve these lands. I think certainly sort of bigger picture, the things that they're doing are beneficial to all of us. Talk about global warming or biodiversity, preserving biodiversity, things like that. They're working to preserve these forests, and that's something that does benefit all of us. Maybe it's just a little bit, but their forests are processing carbon out of the air and sequestering it, and makes the air we breathe that much cleaner and that much cooler, I guess.
Yeah. Can you describe the satisfaction that gives to you?
Yeah, I think it's the same impulse that drove me to go to law school, which is to take on someone else's problems on their behalf, or help them, not take on in their place, but take on with them a set of problems they face and try to help them solve it. And by taking that on, for me, I feel the same sort of sense of satisfaction as if it's my problem that I've helped solve. So it's that same sort of problem-solving satisfaction that I get from solving my own problems.
Mm-hmm. You are an awesome young man, I have to say. I will say to our audience, one of the most impressive young people I've met in years. The reason I believe is because you do things. You're out there doing, and that's what you've just described. It's not a desire to do good per se, although I could argue that actually all you're doing is good, but the idea of getting something done, taking action, is really very impressive to me, and again, I congratulate you on that. For our audience, what is the website?
The website is www.nativefuture.org.
So your organization has three aspects to it. Tell us briefly about those three components and what they're trying to accomplish.
So right now we have three projects. One is the Land Tenure Project, which is trying to help 3 communities get legal title to their traditional lands. One is an education project, which works with both the Wonan and with a couple of other indigenous groups in western Panama. And then the third is sustainable economic development, which is something that we're sort of just now moving into. And so really got 2 principal programs at this point, with one that we're sort of looking to develop a little more down the line.
Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of our viewers, they might say, if this Wonan people's trials and tribulations were resonant with you because of the similarities to Hawaii's history and actions, why not have an organization like this here in Hawaii? Why go somewhere else to help somebody else, or work with somebody else on their problems?
I mean, I think that's a fair criticism. And it's certainly something that I've felt at times when I feel like Native Future is taking up too much of my life. Sometimes I feel, man, why am I still involved in helping this community that's now how many 10,000 miles away from me?
Yes.
And these same problems exist here, and I could be doing it so much closer to home, and that's true. I do think there are a lot of people helping the Native Hawaiian communities here, and the reality is that the Wonan are so small that they don't really have anyone who is their advocate at all. And I guess that's one rationale for it, but I think the most honest answer is probably, this is what I started doing, and I feel a personal connection there, and the problem is still out there, and I guess I just can't seem to let it go until make some more progress on it.
Raising the point was not a criticism.
Yeah.
Please, it's just the idea. Hopefully, again, you as an example, you as a fine role model for people might stimulate them to go ahead and do the same thing wherever they are, whether it's here in Hawaii or in Tijuana, Mexico, or who knows. There's certainly enough problems around the world that require more teamwork to
That's certainly true.
With. So your organization, you have. Do you personally work in all 3 aspects? All three of the projects. What is your?
So I focus right now on the land tenure issues. I've been at the beginning. I was the treasurer of the organization, and then I was the president for a couple of years, and I recently handed that off in October to another of our board members, and so I could just really focus on this land tenure project and helping 3 Wonan communities, one of them a community that I lived in as a volunteer, get legal title to their traditional lands.
For all 3 of the projects, did you design the mission statement, if you will, for each aspect of it?
Well, we sort of, I mean, the organization was started because of this desire to help these 3 communities get land tenure, and I think that's always been at the core of our mission. But as we sort of grew and brought other people into the board, other people had, other interests too, and that were certainly not incompatible with what we were doing. In fact, I think probably the biggest success of our land tenure project has actually been an education success, which is educating a member of one of the communities, Rio Hondo, a young man by the name of Leonidas Quiros, who's about my age, who just finished law school in Panama. We helped put him through law school, and so he's been working by day and taking classes by night, and moved out of his town into a nearby provincial capital of Chepo to be able to be close enough to law school where he could commute into the city and take classes. And he's finished his coursework. He'll graduate in October, and he'll be a lawyer able to continue to help his people.
La situación de los Wonan es que ellos reclaman su protección, su medio ambiente, su bosque, su territorio, porque de ella depende la vida del Wonan. Sin la tierra, sin el bosque, los Wonan desaparecerán. Y es por eso que ellos tienen una lucha ardua ante el gobierno, reclamar su tierra por más de 30 años que se lo están pidiendo, pero actualmente no se está viendo eso. Entonces es por eso que al no protegerlo o el gobierno deja que los colonos invadan o destruyan su territorio, perderemos prácticamente totalmente nuestra identidad, tal vez físicamente no, pero culturalmente sí.
I can see the relationship between these aspects of the project. You want to accomplish one goal, and that identifies other necessities and requirements that have to be met to reach that goal. Somebody to work on it, somebody local that has the knowledge and information from a cultural standpoint or whatever. So you're able to support this person to become a legal in Panama.
Exactly.
And there are other aspects. Your website, you've got a number of great things that I've discovered. So one of them is this challenge
campaign. Right.
Thank
So
you.
last, at the end of November, December of last year, we started this challenge campaign. We'd gotten a few donations from some of our bigger supporters. We're sort of on the verge of really, putting the pieces together after helping Leo get through law school, after developing some of the other leaders in Panama and getting people on the same page and sort of encouraging that sort of communication and infrastructure among the leadership.
You got to come up with something fresh to keep the interest up. So
yeah, exactly. So we were able to get some donations, for us at the time relatively large ones, and then we challenged our members to match that donations, and we did. In fact, we exceeded our goal, and so we were able to raise $30,000 altogether by March of this past year, and now actually just in May I just went down to Panama and sort of presented that to the Wonan leadership there, and we sort of tried to put the project into their hands, and I helped them design a land tenure project that, we have the Native Future has a land tenure project, which is sort of just generally trying to help them get legal title to their lands, but at the end of the day, it's going to require the participation of the communities and the Wonan leaders themselves to go to these meetings with the government and really take this on as their own. They're the ultimate beneficiaries, and so it seemed to make the most sense to have them be the ones really taking charge of the project. And so we're essentially now providing funding for this project that we've helped them design and that they're going to manage themselves. I think that the land tenure is so important to them that is really what they...
It's not your idea.
It's not our idea. This is a response to being... It was clearly what the community wanted when I was a volunteer. That more than anything else, if they could have said, Zach, you don't do any of this agricultural nonsense that Peace Corps sent you here to do. We want you to help us get land tenure. You know, they could have said that. They practically did say that to me. But, you know, it was not something, it was far too political for me to work on as a Peace Corps volunteer. And so I think in some ways this organization is my feeling like as a volunteer I was not, although I was able to do a lot of things that I was proud of and I think were beneficial to the community and I think the community liked, the one thing that they always most wanted me to help with I was not able to do as a volunteer. And so in some ways this organization is a response to that. And I think that they recognize that without their lands they're gone as a culture. You know, it's their livelihood and it's their way of life and it's their culture and their sort of, you know, they are
heritage,
exactly everything. And so they know that without the lands they're gone.
You can't devalue everything at all.
Right.
I would say. And again, this is something that you know, on the one hand, it's not really important to the rest of the world, but on the other hand, because it's everything, it is extremely important, perhaps the most important thing that we as a people need to understand and embrace, is my belief system. So having an organization like this, again, you're relatively young as an organization. You were sanctified by your 503 status, 501 status in 04, so it's been roughly 4 years. You bring some supporters on, you get some support, and hopefully it starts to snowball. You've done other things. You had a scholarship program, the Basilio Perez Scholarship Program. How did that come about, and what is it? What is it?
So that's one of our current board members, who is also a Peace Corps volunteer in Panama, had worked as a Peace Corps volunteer. I know in Panama and I think in other posts throughout the world there are often small scholarship programs that are run by the volunteers with some Peace Corps money that provide scholarships to women and girls who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend school from rural areas, who have to board at a school in more of a town center. And so she had worked on this project as a Peace Corps volunteer and continued to work on it on her own after she came back. She was a little bit older when she went to the Peace Corps. She was, I think, 60 when she started as a volunteer. She'd been a volunteer earlier when she was in her 20s in Colombia and decided to do it again later on in life. And she'd started this project, and it got a little bit too big for her to just do on her own. So we brought her into Native Future and sort of adopted that project. And so the Basilio Perez Scholarship Fund raises money to pay for both girls and boys who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend public schools in Panama because of the cost of uniforms and the cost of boarding from rural areas to attend schools. And it gives them, $100, $150 a year to allow those children to attend school.
Bueno, en especial nosotros sí queremos dar la bienvenida a todas las personas que nos puedan y que tengan interés y la voluntad de identificar con la causa nuestra. A las personas que viven fuera de nuestro país, organizaciones, gobiernos, personas particulares, fundaciones, etcétera, que tengan ese deseo en apoyar a nosotros y también ayudar en todo lo que se pueda a la causa de este pueblo pequeño que necesita mucho apoyo. Nosotros creemos que como otros grupos indígenas, aparte de nosotros, ya sea nacional en Panamá y fuera de nuestro Panamá a nivel de América, hay muchos grupos indígenas que están marginados. Hay muchos pueblos indígenas que no están reconocidas por su gobierno, no están bien atendidas. Nosotros nos identificamos con ellos y ellos tienen su propia lucha. Donde yo sé, la característica de los pueblos indígenas en América es siempre la lucha por su tierra. Y por eso para nosotros es de mucho significado de proteger nuestra tierra y la existencia propia de nuestra identidad. No queremos ser otra vez víctimas, queremos ser parte de nuestra nación, queremos participar en el proceso del desarrollo de nuestro pueblo y nuestro país. Así que necesitamos mucho apoyo a las personas que tengan ese deseo y están muy bienvenidos por parte de nosotros. Sí.
By giving something, you're buying into this project, into this idea that, you know, together as a community we can make our community better.
Yeah.
And so it's less about sort of tangible things that you're getting back, I think, than really an investment of yourself or your company into an idea and into investing in possibility.
Yeah, well, that's it exactly. And Zach, we want to thank you very much for giving us an insight into a very small aspect of all of the things that's going on with Native Future and the possibilities for people to team up with other human beings in doing something. And you're right, the value is not tangible. It's human to human contact and caring for each other. Again, thank you. Keep up the great work. We hope you'll come and see us again and
Thanks
give
for
us an
having me.
update on important things that you're doing in your life. To our viewers here in the Olelo community, the community of Hawaii, we thank you for joining us again for this episode of Bring the World Home. We tried to expose you to the idea of getting out and working within your community and solving a problem that you see, doing something tangible. On behalf of the Return Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii, come and visit us again next week here on Olelo Channel 53. Bring the World Home. Thank you.